The wind howled across the frontier, carrying with it a memory most men had tried to bury. 15 years ago, a cowboy rode into the desert with blood on his hands, not from a crime but from a battle he couldn't win. That day, among the ashes of a burned camp, he found a half-starved Apache girl, her eyes hollow with fear, her lips cracked from thirst. He gave her bread when no one else would. But here's the question. What happens when kindness shown to a stranger returns with the weight of an army? And when a forgotten promise rides back into town with vengeance in its eyes? Subscribe to the channel for more Wild West stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. The cowboy's name was Thomas Hale, a quiet man who didn't carry more words than bullets in his belt. That day the girl he saved had been no older than 10, her tribe scattered, her family gone. He had taken her to the mission near Santa Fe, leaving her in the care of the sisters who promised to find her a place. He never thought of her again, at least not until whispers began spreading in town that a column of Apache warriors was riding across the desert like a storm. The sheriff, an old hand with gray stubble and eyes too wary for another war, called the townsfolk into the square. "They say a woman leads them," he said, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "A woman who carries the scars of fire and a heart filled with vengeance." The outlaws at the edge of the crowd smirked, eager for blood. The townsfolk trembled, gripping their children's hands. And Thomas, he just stood still, remembering the girl's hollow eyes. Could it be her? 2 nights later, the earth trembled under the hooves of 100 riders. Torches lit the night, casting shadows against the clapboard saloon and church walls. The warriors surrounded the town, but they did not fire an arrow. From their ranks rode a woman draped in leather and beads, her long braids glistening in the moonlight. She looked down from her painted horse, her gaze sweeping over the people of the town until it fell on Thomas. For a long, breathless moment, nobody spoke. Then, with a voice that cut sharper than a Bowie knife, she said, "15 years ago, one man saved me when the world had left me for dead. That man stands before you." Her finger lifted, steady as a rifle barrel, pointing to Thomas. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Was she here for revenge, gratitude, or something far more dangerous? The outlaw Briggs, a sneering brute with a scar across his jaw, stepped forward, eager to stir the pot. "Looks to me like she brought an army to take what she pleases," he spat. "Sheriff, are we just gonna let savages ride in and threaten our town?" His hand hovered near his revolver. Tension thickened like smoke in a burning barn. But the woman, her face lit by firelight, didn't flinch. She spoke only to Thomas. "You fed me when I was forgotten. Tonight I return not as your enemy but as your debt repaid. These warriors ride with me because the same men who burned my tribe now stalk your town. They are not far and they come for blood." Gasps echoed. Could it be true? That the town's peace was nothing more than a shadow waiting to be shattered? The sheriff's weathered hand fell heavy on his holster. "If she speaks the truth, we got no choice but to stand with her," he said. But Briggs snarled, shaking his head. "Or we put her and her heathens in the ground before they turn on us." Thomas stepped forward then, his boots crunching the dirt. He met the woman's eyes, now filled not with hunger but with fire. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "They call me Ayanna. But you once called me Little One." The memory pierced him like a knife. She was the girl, and now she carried the weight of a people behind her. Before another word could pass, the distant crack of rifles split the night. Bullets hissed into the wooden walls of the saloon. Out of the dark canyon came riders, outlaws, mercenaries who had long profited from selling stolen land. Briggs' own men, traitors to the town, had led them here. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The sheriff barked orders, townsfolk scrambled for cover, and Thomas drew iron, firing into the night. The Apache warriors answered with arrows and rifles of their own, standing shoulder to shoulder with the very people who once called them enemies. Ayanna rode at the front, her war cry splitting the air as she led her fighters against the ambush. Amid the smoke and fire, Thomas saw Briggs turn his gun not on the raiders but on Ayanna. Betrayal gleamed in his eyes. In a heartbeat, Thomas leapt, shoving her from the path of Briggs' bullet. The shot ripped through Thomas's shoulder, dropping him to the dirt. Rage surged through Ayanna as she raised her bow, loosing an arrow that struck Briggs in the chest. The outlaw staggered, fell, and lay still in the dust. The battle raged until dawn painted the desert red. By then, the raiders had fled or fallen. The town stood battered but unbroken, its people alive only because of the warriors they once feared. Thomas lay against the church wall, his wound bound tight. Ayanna stood over him, her face softened by the first light of morning. "You saved me once," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "Tonight, I returned the favor. We are even now." But Thomas shook his head. "No, girl. Kindness don't keep score. It just keeps riding." The sheriff, bruised and bloodied, stepped forward, tipping his hat to Ayanna. "This town owes you more than we can say. You're no enemy here." And for the first time, the line between Apache and settler blurred, if only for a moment. As the warriors rode back into the desert, the townsfolk watched in silence, their fear replaced with a quiet respect. Thomas sat with his arm in a sling, watching Ayanna disappear into the horizon. He knew the frontier would always bleed, always burn, but perhaps that night proved something. Mercy given in a world of violence can grow into a force stronger than hatred. The moral lingered like the echo of hooves on the canyon floor. One act of kindness, even in the darkest hour, can return years later as the salvation of many. In a land where trust was rare and steel was law, that truth shone brighter than gold.